Imagine waking up in complete darkness, your hands tied behind your back, the smell of wet stone filling your lungs, and somewhere in the distance, a man screaming so loudly that even the rats stop moving. You try to remember where you are, then it hits you, the prison. Not a modern prison with walls, guards, and rules. No. This was a medieval prison, a place designed not to hold people, but to erase them. And once those iron doors closed behind you, almost no one ever came back out. Tonight we enter one of the darkest places in human history, because the truth about medieval prisons was far worse than most people realize. And the reason no one escaped was more terrifying than the chains. Most people imagine medieval prisons as castles with bars and guards, walking around with torches. But that image is wrong. In the Middle Ages, prisons were not meant for long-term punishment the way modern prisons are today. They were waiting rooms for suffering. If you were thrown into one, it usually meant one of three things. You were waiting for trial, waiting for ransom, or waiting to die. That was it. There were no rehabilitation programs, no rights, no scheduled meals, no appeal. You were not a prisoner. You were a problem, temporarily stored in stone. And once you entered, survival depended less on innocence and more on money, luck, and whether anyone outside still remembered your name. Let us say it is the year 1324. Rain is falling over a cold English town. You have been accused of stealing grain from a nobleman's storehouse. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. It does not matter. Two guards drag you through muddy streets, while townspeople watch silently from wooden doorways. No one helps, because helping you could mean joining you. They pull you toward a square tower beside the castle wall. There are no signs, no windows near the ground, only a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron strips. When it opens, the smell hits first. Rot, human waste, wet straw, mold, and fear. A kind of fear that lingers in walls for decades. You are shoved inside. The door slams, and suddenly, you understand why screams sounded different from in here. Medieval prisons came in many forms. Castle dungeons, town gate towers, underground pits, monastery cells, even abandoned storage rooms turned into holding chambers. But all shared one purpose: break the body, break the mind, break hope. Some cells were so small a person could not fully lie down. Others were deep shafts where prisoners were lowered by rope and left below ground. Some had no light at all. Others had a tiny slit window high above, where daylight looked less like freedom and more like mockery. And if you were poor, conditions became worse, because in many places prisoners had to pay for their own food. If you had coins, family or friends, someone might bring bread or soup. If you had nothing, you starved. And that was the real reason many never escaped, because by the time they understood the prison had already broken them. Inside the prison, the air feels heavier than stone, as if even breathing has a cost. You sit in the darkness trying to understand voices around you. Some are praying, some are laughing without reason, and some are just silent like they are already gone. You realize quickly that time here does not move normally. There is no morning, no night, only dim memory of light that once existed outside. Days pass, or maybe weeks. You cannot tell anymore. The only rhythm is footsteps of guards and the sound of chains dragging across stone. Sometimes a door opens and someone is taken. They never come back the same. Some return screaming, some return silent. And silence here is more dangerous than noise, because silence means something inside them has already broken permanently. Then you hear stories from other prisoners. Whispers about what lies deeper in the prison, hidden rooms below the dungeon, places where questions are asked without mercy, where confession is not spoken but forced out of the body. You do not believe it at first. But then you see a man return after being taken away, his hands shaking uncontrollably, eyes empty, repeating the same words again and again. I told them everything. One night you notice something strange. A section of the wall is different, newer stone among old, and a faint sound echoes from behind it, like metal against metal. Another prisoner tells you in a broken voice that there were tunnels built under some prisons, not for escape, but for control. Secret passageways where guards moved unseen, where prisoners were moved without warning, and where no one could track where they disappeared. Fear slowly changes shape inside you. It is no longer about death. It is about waiting. Because in this place, waiting is the real punishment. People stop planning escape, not because it is impossible, but because hope itself starts to feel dangerous. And yet, deep inside, something refuses to die completely. A small thought that whispers maybe there is a way out. Maybe someone once escaped. But every time you ask, the answer is the same. No one really leaves this place the same way they entered. And then one night, everything changes. Heavy footsteps stop in front of your cell. The key turns slowly in the lock. The sound feels louder than thunder in the silence. A guard points at you without speaking. And in that moment, every story you heard inside the prison comes alive at once. Because being chosen here never means freedom. It only means you are going deeper, into places most prisoners never return from. We're about to dive deep into the story. If you are enjoying the story so far, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The guard pulls you through the cold corridor, the torchlight flickering on wet stone walls, every step echoing like it is coming from somewhere inside your own head. You pass doors you have never seen before, heavier than anything you imagined. Iron-reinforced wood that feels like it was built to keep the world from hearing what happens inside. And with every step forward, the air gets colder, heavier, like the prison itself is breathing on you. You are taken into a chamber where the light is dim and unnatural. Not darkness, but something worse. A controlled light that makes everything feel unreal. There are men sitting behind a table, not shouting, not angry, just watching. And that silence is more terrifying than any scream you heard inside the cells. They ask questions slowly, calmly, as if your answers do not matter because they already know everything they want to hear. Time loses meaning again, questions repeat, pressure builds, and slowly you understand the truth of this place. The prison was never only about holding bodies. It was about rewriting minds. Some prisoners confessed to things they never did just to stop the endless waiting. Others broke so completely that they began believing their own guilt. And in this place, truth and survival became enemies of each other. You hear whispers of what lies beneath the prison, hidden tunnels carved deeper than the dungeon itself, places where prisoners were taken and never recorded again, not because they died immediately, but because they stopped being counted. Some were moved between cells so many times they forgot their own names. Others disappeared into systems of punishment that had no official record. And that is why history says so few escaped. Because escape did not always mean running out. Sometimes it meant being erased quietly inside. And then comes the final truth. The reason no one truly escaped medieval prisons, it was not just walls, not just guards, not just chains. It was the system itself, built so that even if your body left, your identity did not survive, records were lost. Accusations followed you forever, and in many cases, escape only moved you from one prison to another larger one outside the walls. The world itself became part of the prison. In the end, you realize something chilling. Most prisoners did not stay because they could not escape. They stayed because escape no longer felt real. The prison had slowly replaced reality with something smaller, darker, and easier to accept. And by the time the door finally opens for some, they are no longer the same person who entered. And that is the brutal truth they hid about medieval prisons. Not just places of punishment, but machines designed to dissolve hope itself, where escape was not prevented by walls alone, but by breaking the very idea that freedom still existed.